Jetcraft because of our proven results in aircraft sales, acquisitions and trades. Our team of experts span the globe, providing local insight for every stage of your transaction. We have one of the largest and most diverse inventories in the industry, and with our worldwide network and industry connections, we are the difference between getting an aircraft and getting your aircraft.
Hi everyone, this is Scott O'Brien with NBAA. I wanted to let you know about our Tax, Regulatory, and Risk Management Conference, which will be October 10th through 11th, right before NBA Base in Las Vegas. Please join us to learn about the latest in federal and state tax planning for aircraft transactions and updates on key regulatory issues involving aircraft exports and the FAA registry modernization. Please visit nbaa.org/tax2021 to learn more. We hope to see you in Las Vegas.
Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to the Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall. It's the 15th of September. From around the world. And we're delighted to be starting with John Amate, Vice President of Membership at Magellan, let's call the whole thing off, Jets. John, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. So you're one of the biggest brokers and jet card companies in the US. What are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously, and it sounds cliche at this point, but we're in unprecedented times. But what we're seeing is this continuation of demand for charter, jet card programs, jet membership. Across the board, we're seeing activity levels that exceed anything previous to the pandemic. So, at the moment, we're not seeing any sign that the U.S. government will do anything to restrict the overall population of the U.S. in a way that would adversely affect the economy. And I think that's a bit different than last year at this time, where we were all really getting our arms around what this, again, cliche new normal would be with the COVID pandemic. Having said that as well, we have seen this stall in the airlines, the commercial airlines' ability to ramp back up based on the amount of demand out there. And I don't think it's being helped at all by the fact that there's restrictions of routes, there's elimination of schedules, and to cap things off, it's created a lot of unpredictability or lack of predictability. And we're seeing that there's a lot of bad press around the commercial airlines. And those things in combination, I think, have driven a whole new group of people that hadn't previously considered on-demand charter or private travel in general to experience it. And, they're developing an affinity for it pretty quickly.
So far, your demand's all been, or not all, but the majority of your demand's been leisure travelers through the summer. Are you seeing businesses come back?
It's a great question. I have started to see business come back. I would have thought previous to this that the business demand would have exceeded leisure. And it's happened quite the opposite. I think that leisure demand has come back first. And now we're starting to see that same spike in business demand. The only way that I can justify it is that a lot of businesses needed to reset. They needed to figure out how to reinvent themselves, how to pivot in order to continue to grow and maintain their longevity within their own relative market space. And now that they've got those things sorted out, even there's still some lack of predictability with regard to how travel and so forth might be impacted for them for COVID specifically, they're now starting to look at ways in which they can get their executive teams at minimum in other facets of their organization around the country, around the world, so that they continue to capture market share and meet their growth objectives, whether it be privately or for their investors.
Are you getting inbound calls from businesses going, we've been off too late, and we're planning next year? Or do you have any guidance on when everyone will be back?
Yeah, we've seen a massive influx of calls come in. Fortunately, and as you know, Magellan Jets really does try to take a stance within the industry of being informative and educating the marketplace. And I think for all of us to carry that, that message of unity, it's important that the people we're working with understand the inner workings of private travel. Having said that, yeah, we've seen a great deal of people come in that are interested in understanding what programs are available to them. And within that segment, there's a mix of those that had strictly flown commercially in the past. And then as you look up into the larger organizations, we're seeing a number of the larger players contemplating whether or not they want to maintain their corporately held assets, whether they want to eliminate those fixed costs, those larger line items within budgets, just because, again, on a geoeconomic scale, I think there's still a bit of uncertainty. But they want something that guarantees them that continuity, that consistency of travel when they need to get where they need to go. One of the industries we're seeing probably spike a little bit sooner than others is manufacturing. And when you think about it logically, it stands to reason, because you've got these people that have manufacturing facilities or R&D facilities, whatever it may be, that are in more remote pockets of the country, at least in the US. Commercial airlines very rarely satisfied those locations in the past, but certainly now, with reduced schedules or lack of nonstop availability, crowded flights, you've seen people literally getting into fights on aircraft in the media. It's really driven them to look at this model much more seriously.
As if flying commercial wasn't bad enough before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any interesting patterns where your customers have moved out of the big cities and are now have now relocated to the country?
Well, for us, we've always maintained a focus on a purely private traveler, so not appealing to the masses. And I believe that we've maintained that even through this shift. What we're seeing is, in some areas, there are populations in areas like California and New York, where those times during the course of the pandemic, that the city just lost its usual liveliness, contemplated what else was out there, and they're relocating either to the suburbs or to other areas in the country. Predominantly speaking, though, the majority of our clients would have had several homes throughout the country, and they're looking at private travel, whether they've done it in the past or they're new to it, as that catalyst to get their life back. It's a way for them to experience what's out there in a safe manner, with limited, touches with other people that might be carrying the virus. And there's something to be said for the gratitude that we get when we fly somebody corporately and we get them to their meeting on time, we get them to an important engagement on time. There's also something to be said for the individual who has always had the means to fly privately, but has now begun, and it's maybe the first time that grandparents are seeing their grandchildren in a year's time, or family reunions. And we're seeing a number of things come up like that. Of course, once they try it, it's very difficult, I think, for most individuals, if they can afford it, to go back the other way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Very addictive. Are you seeing demand slightly? You had amazing demand. You've grown amazingly well in the last 12 months, or probably the last 15 months. But it's also getting very hard, isn't it, to find aircraft? Can we keep growing at this rate, or are we going to see it having to taper off? I think the square root. Are we going to see things starting to flatten out just because there's no supply?
Right. I think all of us wish we had that crystal ball. Having said that, though, I do think that we're going to continue to see an increase in demand, and we're at this really critical inflection point in this industry. And I'm very interested to hear from some of the other panelists you have today, because there's a responsibility that we, as providers in this industry, carry to those that we're providing the service to. And I think it starts with education, but it also leads to making the right decisions for your business, but that starts with making the right decision for your customer. A lack of availability should never, ever mean that you're putting safety into question. A lack of availability is never an excuse for poor service. And I believe that we as an industry need to think more about coming together and carrying that message of what's the right thing to do for your client, what's the right thing to do for your own internal resources. You hit this, magnitude of scales where you've got a number of pilots that are hitting levels of exhaustion. And as a company, having a safety management system is critical to that, but not just a safety management system that is documented and sits on the shelf. It has to be the fabric of the organization. And I think we need to see more of that as the fabric of the industry so that we can keep people safe, keep them flying privately. And if we do this correctly, I think that growth will continue, maybe not quite as aggressively as we've seen, but there's definitely room for growth. And, I'm excited about that potential, again, under the right circumstances.
Are you worried that you're going to get to the point when you'll have to say to your members, look, I'm sorry, you can't fly on Friday. I can't find you a jet?
I think that's always a concern, but we've developed this relationship of transparency. And again, I think it just goes back to that fabric of the company and people really understanding your adherence to your core values. A lot of that sounds like, again, just pretty words on a page or in a picture, but we're very, very fortunate in the history of this organization to have committed to that as a foundation. And while that is a concern, quite honestly, when those situations do occur, I think our clients understand that we're always going to make the right decision for them and for, most importantly, for their safety. We want to maintain that continuity of their experience and what they know Magellan stands for. And while it's more difficult to find aircraft, truly having the model that we've built, and I can't speak for others in other industries, but it allows us to be very selective both about the aircraft and the crews. So when some of those issues, whether it's non-compliance with vaccination or whatever the situation might be, come up, it gives us that latitude to find the right aircraft, to find the right operator. The last thing I would add is it's letting our clients know what the situation is in the industry. We've been very, very vocal about with our clients so that they have an advanced understanding of some of the challenges we may face, especially as we head into this peak season of travel in the US.
John, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for that. And we'll come back to you later if that's okay.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So that was great. We've heard it firsthand from Magellan there. We're now delighted to have Ryan from the National Air Transport Association, Ryan Wagispak, whose wife is recovering from COVID as we speak. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm testing. I've tested negative, which is good, but both double vaxxed, and it's just an odd situation. But she's recovering well, so thank you.
Great. Well, best wishes from the whole corporate Jet Investor Town Hall community to her. What are you seeing at the moment?
Well, I mean, I don't even know if I have to talk after that. John hit it out of the park. I mean, it's spot on so many levels. I was jotting notes down when he was speaking. As we're all seeing, right? Historic highs of charter activity, historic lows in aircraft inventory. We've got some real opportunities ahead for our industry. But with that, as he mentioned, we've got some real challenges, and we desperately need leadership now more than ever to, communicate, collaborate, engage all across the spectrum, whether it's air to ground ops, right? We've been hearing trends of challenges with fuel shortages and catering issues. Well, one of the unintended challenges that we've seen with the pandemic is like ground crews, right? FBOs can't find workers. I could name you dozens of large FBOs that you've got GMs, you've got safety officers that have been working the ramp for the past 6-8 months, trying to maintain this level that we've seen. like I said, some challenges, HR issues, right? Pilots, real big challenge coming down. What I've heard is a lot of these operations, 20 plus days running, trying to meet the demand. Historically, you would do, 2, 3, 4 segments a day on a busy day. Now we're consistently doing 6 and 7 plus. We're stretching ourselves really thin. So it is concerning from the safety aspect of it. So like I said, the communication is key, and engaging across your company and across the spaces we can, because we all do want to continue to provide this, incredibly valuable service and continue to ride this wave up, as John mentioned.
There's a great comment from Fabrizio Poli. Pilot fatigue is a big problem and cropping up as part of accidents investigations more and more. You worried about general industry fatigue? Because historically, the summer wasn't such a crazy month for people in the US, and they could have a break. And we don't see any demand going at the moment. 5 years ago, everyone would have loved this problem. But now,
that's exactly right. Well, and on top of that, Al, we don't think about the chronic fatigue that the whole globe has been going through with COVID, and how that is continuing to weight. You've got family issues, right? You've got concerns for your kids. There's this overwhelming weight that is always sitting on our shoulders. And then we are trying to produce at a high level and consistently produce at a high level. When we are, we're in a high risk game. I mean, we fly turbine aircraft, right? There are a lot of ops. They don't end well if we have mistakes.
We've got a great question from Alex Berry, who's a sort of European charter and card and fractional veteran. Alex is saying, is it time for some regulation of the charter market?
Is it time for some regulation of the charter market? Meaning, we are already highly regulated with oversight with the regulatory, but are you saying on the ability to capture how much volume you can do? Or
I think Alex is coming at this from the broker side. So there is some regulation in the US on charter brokers, but probably not less than say a car salesman has.
Unfortunately, that is the truth. And that's why valued organizations like Magellan, right, where his first comment was education, right? Really working with the client to educate them through the entire process, what they need, vetting aircraft that are certificated, that from operations that do have a good safety record. It's not Jim down in the van by the river or kid in the basement with his credit card. So we've got this is an opportunity in my mind for us as an industry to continue to mature and grow. As I said, the volume's there.
What's you come at this from the trade body. You guys worked flat out during COVID. You were on the Hill arguing for your members to be covered by various things like the CARES Act. You guys constantly have issues that pop up, and I think you guys get a completely different view. You've got a lovely 360 view. What's worrying you and Tim at the moment, and your colleagues?
It's the burnout, it's the fatigue, it's the safety aspects of it, right? We are quickly trying to adapt as an industry as a whole on this level of volume. It's incredible. This year alone, we've seen a 40% uptick in illegal charter reports. 40%.
Wow.
Just here stateside. Again, if you can't, people want to fly private. It is in scope. It is no longer seen as a luxury. It is essential, right? Companies, families, we want to do this to mitigate risk. So if they can't get it through a jet card, or they're challenged to find it right from a broker, then they're finding lifts somewhere. And so that's why we're seeing a tremendous uptick in illegal charter. And I'm leave today for Omaha to go, and we're continuing our outreach, trying to educate with the FAA on what you can and cannot do.
So one of the things we've talked about quite a lot in the last few years, I see David Norton has just joined the call, has been cracking down on illegal charter. But the FAA is doing a lot of cracking down at the moment, aren't they?
They are. They have built their processes internally over the last 3 years, and they have continued to take this very seriously, and there's no end in sight. They see this as a safety risk. NTSB is involved now heavily, and other government agencies to collaborate and make sure we can tamp this down as much as possible. Because now it's a safety risk, right? It's not a desire to move away from the regs or people making money. It's really a safety.
I've just lost you, Ryan. I don't know if it's you or me.
I can hear you.
I think I lost you. So I'm guessing everyone else heard you. Final question. It's very exciting. In Europe, you didn't make it because of your wife's COVID, but there was a great air charter exhibition yesterday at Biggin Hill. JetNet IQ is taking place today. We've got the base and the tax conference. By the way, this is the year to attend the tax conference. It's like that's the hottest topic probably at the moment, exporting aircraft. And you also have an event coming up in Miami. Do you want to just quickly talk about it?
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting. It's on the back end of Corporate Jet Investor. It's the November Business Aviation Week. So we're bringing a roundtable discussion together with leadership within the business aviation arena here at USA side to discuss all of these topics that we're all facing and how leaders are going to manage the continued flow and the challenges ahead of us, and how we can continue to grow. So I'm excited about our November event.
And a great cure for fatigue and burnout is staying up all night talking to industry colleagues.
That's exactly right. That's right. That's right.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
And we're just going to have a quick message from Jetcraft now.
For nearly 60 years, clients have returned to Jetcraft because of our proven results in aircraft sales, acquisitions and trades. Our team of experts span the globe, providing local insight for every stage of your transaction. We have one of the largest and most diverse inventories in the industry, and with our worldwide network and industry connections, we are the difference between getting an aircraft and getting your aircraft.
Hi, welcome back to the Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall. Got some fantastic questions popping in. Brian Moss, no worries that you joined late. And there's a fantastic question from Sean Vick, which I'll hold up for someone in a second. We're now delighted to go to Robert Baltus, Chief Operating Officer at the European Business Aviation Association. Robert, how are you?
Very well, Al, and thank you for having us.
Not at all. You've got some slides, so I'm going to disappear from the screen and we'll try and share those now. Do you want to try actually before I disappear? I'll tell you if they're working. Look at that. You can tell he's been trained. Right, I'll let you go and I'll slip away for now. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks. Yes, Al, and the reason to put up the slides is after we've seen we heard what's happening in the US, we thought, let's put on some figures of what's happening in Europe to put some things from our side in perspective. We're not there yet from what Ryan was saying, how the market is doing, but we have some nice slides already. I think this sums up what's happening in Europe nicely. What we are looking at, if we look at the red line, is that if we do a year-on-year comparison, not with 2020, which is the blue line, but we're more interested with 2019. And we look at the red line, we see that Europe had an amazing July and August. So this is purely on a flight-by-flight basis. We'll go into some details on that later. But if we look at this WingX and Eurocontrol data, it definitely looks like we're going in the same direction as our colleagues in the US. If we look at this slide, and if you look on the left, it basically shows what we did January to August 2019 as normal times. We're doing fairly okay. The big red one is the UK, and if we look at the volume of flight, that really hurts the industry, so that's not too good. But if we look August to August on the right, so August 2019 to 2021, we're not the US yet. I don't think we have all the issues the US has, but it starts to look green. And I said it in previous presentations, if we're not doing well in business aviation, but can you imagine you're in commercial aviation? But looking at these figures, at least for the shorter flights, it's going in the right direction. And I just wanted to quickly show this slide. If we look, and the easiest one is the one on the right, if you have a turboprop, light jet, or a midsize, you are in the right territory. This is your time to shine. And the heavy jets are having a tougher time. The bizliners even worse. And it's a little bit skewed actually, because the heavy jets are now being used within Europe more than anything else. So Europe looks good, but specifically on the shorter flights. But what are we doing on the longer range? And this is where you can see where some of our members, and I think some of the other operators outside Europe, have a lot of pain as well. We see that the travel between the US and Europe is down 42%, and that's from a relatively large base of 8,000 flights. That is hurting the larger cabins. Same with Asia, it's still down, but we see that there are, and I think that ties in with what John was saying in the first speech. The main thing we see is that it's more VFR travel, and that shows with the flights which are now to the Caribbean and places like that, which have definitely grown. So Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean, those are the positive ones for the longer range ones. So a really quick run through, and actually to show with figures what the colleagues before me said as well, and what we wanted to show. So based on this, Al,
Robert, that's great. We've got a couple of questions. In fact, you've answered some of them. Raymundo was asking about large cabin versus mid-size. Here's a great question from Sylvie Perron. I was told at Ultimate Jet, I was told new customers are very demanding and arrogant here in Europe. Is that a trend across the board? Would you agree with that?
Well, the reason I prefer to show statistics is that I try to stay from the anecdotal bit, but I think that might be a cultural thing. So unfortunately, I can't answer that one.
Okay. I think I don't see any Europeans being arrogant after Brexit. I'm not allowed to. Question from Terry Sprees. We talk a lot about the pilot shortage. Is it time to relax the upper age limit on pilots?
Yeah, pilot shortage is an interesting thing. If we go back just pre-COVID, we already identified a shortage of pilots, and let's not forget engineers. That's going to be the biggest thing hitting aviation in Europe, and I know from my counterparts at NATA and NBAA, it is already an issue in the US. Europe has a slightly different approach to pilots entering the market. So we have a lower minimum hour limit with a higher training requirement, whereas the US has a fairly high hour requirement for people to enter if you fly commercial. Just upping the upper age will help. Statistically, it definitely will help. But the most important thing is, we need to make sure that we start training again, because at the end of the day, whether we keep them for a few more years, we know there is a shortage around the corner. And one of the things we try to do is show people, if you really enjoy aviation, why did you go into aviation? You want to fly to exciting places, new equipment with the latest materials, and you end up flying, an A319 for a low-cost carrier 3 times a day back and forward. And take the comments about fights in the cabins. I haven't been aware of those in business aviation. So we need to make the case for people to say, hey, it's actually a nice career path to be in business aviation.
Great. Robert, that's fantastic. Really great question from Sean Vick. I'd like your perspective on this as Robert Baltus, not as the European Business Aviation Association. Large-scale providers are competing for assets, aircraft, people, facilities, and etc., and are becoming successful in accessing the capital markets. This is likely expensive money. When the tide goes out, debt will have to be serviced regardless. Are we setting the scene for a market bubble and ultimate correction?
Yeah, I definitely. The market is way on the top, and the positive thing, which might sound like a contradiction, is that manufacturing is lagging a bit. So if everybody got the airplane they want today, we would have created a huge bubble. But your the order books are only growing again, and you have to wait a little bit longer. So I think the capacity as it is, and maybe some older assets which continue to fly a bit longer, those two things can if I go back to 2008 when people were flipping positions and things like that because there was too much capacity from the OEMs available, etc. I don't see that now. I see new customers, and we need to make sure that we keep them. And what John was saying earlier was spot on. We need to educate them, but also once they are on board, they should stay with us, and that's what we all need to do. I keep telling people there's 4 reasons you start to use business aviation: safety, security, flexibility, connectivity. Now, connectivity because of COVID, flexibility will always remain there, but the safety and security bit, we have the best option available. So let's make sure that the bubble, because there are sufficient people who can pay for it, and it's the people who are able to pay for it and to keep them on board. If we do that, then this will be a much longer uptick rather than a bubble.
Great, Robert. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Yes.
We're now going to jump to Greg Johnson from Tivoli. Tivoli, the charter and payments platform. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but Greg also tracks the US market, like the guy in Moneyball did for baseball. Greg does this. So Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Al.
Great. I'm going to hand over to you and let you go through your slides.
Okay. And Hannah, there we go. So if we look at, actually, I'm going to back up one to charter. If we look at the U.S. market, so far, what I'm showing you here is a 365-day trend. And if we look at what we're seeing right now, we're tracking about 12% above 2019 levels. So you see the gray line is 2019 and the red line is 2021. At the peak of the summer, we were tracking almost 30% above 2019 in terms of volume levels, and that was extremely unprecedented and I think unsustainable. I think one of the topics here was, is this sustainable? I think we sort of hit a peak, and there's a number of reasons that things have kind of pulled back a bit, but I don't know that the pullback is permanent, to be candid. And if you just look at the complete slide here, this would have been last fall 2020 compared with sort of 2018. So you can see that we've had periods where we were higher than we are right now, and then where we were lower, that's last fall. As you rolled into sort of January, February of this year, you can see the pattern that has emerged where the volume has really started to exceed what we had 2 years ago. If we take a look at Part 91 flying, we see a similar pattern, right? There was a little pullback, and now we've seen an increase. I guess what I would say here is it's actually been a little bit more consistent. It didn't peak quite as high, but we did get a little pullback. And at any rate, that's where we're at. I wanted to also, though, drill into some specific airports. And, if we take a look at Teterboro, obviously one of the largest or the largest private aviation airport in the world, when you look at it by aircraft movements, it was one of the most heavily impacted just because of its proximity to New York City. And on an interesting but short-term trend, we've seen it actually rebound and get slightly above 2019. So one of the patterns that I think has been talked about by lots of folks across the industry is that demand has shifted to a different set of cities and whatnot. And it's interesting to see that as we roll into September, while there was a dip for the holiday in the States, we're starting to see volume pick back up in Manhattan, which is an early indicator that maybe we're going to see some more business-related travel. Although I would say that the patterns I expect that we're going to see are going to be different going forward than they have been in the past. And part of that is I think there have been some meaningful longer-term shifts in where people are living, and I'm not sure those are going to sort of snap back quickly. So, when we take a look at where people are flying from, there's been a lot of discussion around sort of second home cities or prior cities that were sort of vacation destinations that have become sort of primary locations. And, anecdotally from people that I am speaking with, the trends are still, that folks are continuing to live and operate out of these second home cities. And, in many cases, they're traveling, instead of traveling to those cities on the weekends, as they might have in the past, they're traveling to a city like New York during the week to have meetings with their senior team or customers and whatnot, and then going back to those second home cities. And we see that pattern. I picked out just a couple of airports that we track. Hilton Head is one that's really, look at the red line. It's sort of a whole new world in terms of the demand out of their airport versus 2019. And another one that stands out is Jackson Hole. So these are two cities that throughout the pandemic have just, done, much better than they have historically. And it looks like that's, going to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. So you just see the general seasonal patterns are consistent, but the volume is just, quite a bit higher than we've seen before. And, a lot of folks sort of stop there, but I think, the fact is, if we're seeing more travel or higher traffic in some cities, there have to be some that are not benefiting. And that's also the case if you look around. I only picked a couple. There are plenty of cities that fit these categories as well. And so Pittsburgh is one where, if you look at it, sort of, we've got a pretty flat trend line here at 20+% lower than sort of pre-pandemic levels across the board. And it's a pretty, if we trend line that's going to be consistent. And then, here's St. Louis as another city that, I'm not trying to pick on them. I could find 20 if you want, that fit this pattern where they're just seeing lower levels of demand. So it's going to be interesting. But, my take is I think these patterns are settling in to some degree because, at least with people that I speak with in the industry and people that have made some of these moves, they feel like it's a kind of a life change that they're not ready to sort of snap back from, right? They've adjusted to being able to spend more time in a destination that they like more. And, I think that's going to be with us for a while. So, the flying is going to reflect these new patterns. That's what I have for slides, Al. I could, if we want to talk about other trends, I guess I would say in polling folks and just thinking it through, the fact is that, there's continued fear of being in groups, and especially groups of strangers, right? I've had people draw analogies to sort of the patterns that happened when there was scarcity and fear around supplies back in, say, the Great Depression or during some of the wars, and how for decades afterwards, people that lived through those things always kept their shelves extra stocked, right? It's sort of a lasting impression when you get that sort of a shock. And folks that I'm talking to that are sort of in the forecasting biz are saying they think that we've had a societal change there where, we're all sort of now going to be a little more afraid to get together than we were before. But when we do, as you guys mentioned in ACE and in some events I've been to, it's, there's not a lot of, it's sort of like, well, we're going to pretend there isn't a pandemic when we're getting together for this event or that event. But I think overall, we, even talking about people going to NBAA, there are people doing some additional calculus on, what they're going to do before and after. They might be getting an extra dose of vaccine before they go or things like that. So there's concern that's in there. And I think you combine that concern with the fact that the population of people that could fly privately has always been much, much higher than those that did. Right. And the issue has always been rationalizing the expense. And now we add health as a reason to fly privately. That's a new paradigm. And, I don't think it takes a massive amount of concern for someone that has the means to fly privately to now say, I'm protecting the health of myself and my loved ones, or my colleagues, my employees, by flying this way. And that new permission structure, I think, is going to help, help us have a sustained positive sort of industry outlook, right? So will we see some bubbles like we saw over the summer that, and whatnot? Sure. If we looked out over the horizon, though, I think unless, there's some magic comes along that I don't see, or that hasn't sort of presented itself, I think we're more likely to be dealing with, a longer term sort of pandemic type, situation, right? And it's, while we're going to control it better, it's still going to be out there. And if you've got the financial well-being to be able to protect yourself a little more by flying privately, you're going to do it.
We've got a great question from, actually, a quick question from, two questions. I'm going to combine them. Great one from Terry Spruce. Is the growth from Hilton Head, which is down in Carolinas, isn't it, and Jackson Hole, related to the lack of commercial airline services?
Maybe to some degree. Certainly both of those cities, are, I guess in the case of Hilton Head, there is limited commercial service. There's commercial service into Jackson Hole. We haven't seen the commercial airlines fill that gap, right? So they could have increased schedules that way, and they really haven't. So I would say maybe to a modest degree, but I really think these are people that are, they're always going to have chosen to fly privately out of these cities.
They already had the house and the jet. Great question from Brian Moss saying, do you have any comments on Dallas area airports by any chance?
I do. Dallas Love is also seeing sort of an unprecedented sort of trend in terms of, it's doing better than ever. So I think that's an interesting one, but there's no question that Dallas is climate, maybe because it's warmer. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I do know the data though, and there's no question that the Dallas metro area from a private aviation standpoint is not suffering the fate of some of the other cities like New York or other places. It's actually quite the opposite.
Brilliant, Greg. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And if you're around, we'll come back. Got some great questions, including a lovely one from Jill Woolen. Gil Woolen. Okay, thanks very much. Final speaker, last but not least, we're delighted to have Nick Davis from Instajet. Nick's been in the industry a long time, charter manager at Sunseeker, yacht charter for aviation manager, at Sunseeker, a long time ago. Nick, last week you launched Instajet, a new platform. Do you want to tell us about it?
Well, thanks very much, Al, for letting us come in, and hello to everybody that's out there online. So yeah, I basically put a new app in the App Store, both in Google Play and in the iOS. And really what we want to do is provide the simplicity and understanding for all of these new people coming into private aviation. So they're all used to, Uber, E-Trade, Stock Exchange, Amazon, Deliveroo, all those areas. Technology now is the kind of way forward. So we provide them with a platform for all the categories of aircraft that are relevant to the route. You can just go online, there's no registration required, and it will give you an instant guaranteed reservation price.
Which is the key thing, isn't it? There's lots of apps out there, some great ones, but very few give you instant guaranteed pricing, do they? How do you work that out?
So basically, from the years of experience, so myself and Steve Westlake, who's fairly well known in the industry as well, has come on board, and we've got some other really great kind of partners involved who've looked at all the pricing from all the different platforms over the years on all the routes, spoken to the operators, and really we're desperately trying to align the passenger's motivation with the operator's motivation as well, because as you've had here on previous town halls, the kind of all the private owners at the moment that own the aircraft that are managed, we end up subsidizing, or they end up subsidizing the charter costs. So really for us, it's given them that platform with complete financial security, with an FCA kind of escrow account that their funds are protected in, and us just taking a nominal transactional fee. So we're not a broker in any way. I don't ever want to be known as a broker. So we're out to look after the operators and really match the kind of capacity with the demand. And if the prices need to come up because there's scarcity, then that's what we need to do. But the other thing is that this platform's really good for the future. So we can scale this platform by adding aircraft categories, whether it's eVTOL or VTOL or SETs. So whether they're single engine helicopters, doesn't matter. We can add these in on the platform at any time. So,
and the way it works as an operator, I get an email from you or saying, I've got someone who's willing to pay £100,000 to fly from Paris to Teterboro. And then I go back. I don't bid. I just say I'd like to do it or I don't. Is that right?
Absolutely. This is a no quote platform. So we're not, I having been an operator, myself, and receiving the hundreds of requests on a daily basis, you've got to try and work out scheduling, where the aircraft is, what's going to work. And you go backwards and forwards 10 or 20 times with brokers. Sometimes you've got 3 or 4 brokers chasing the same trip from the same client, and you've got no idea who's going to get it. For us, we're not doing any of that. We basically broadcast. We tell you how much you're being paid for the trip. That price has already been paid. So that is effectively, the equivalent of what the jet cards have currently done. But these are on demand, obviously single prices. It's prepaid, oven ready. We broadcast to the operators. You accept the price, tell us your availability, and our motivation is to upgrade the passenger either into a larger aircraft category or give them the newest aircraft that's out there.
And which is how you pick it.
Yeah. So our priority and our focus is with the passenger. So we're always looking to try and either upgrade them or to give them the newest aircraft, because our fee doesn't change irrespective of the category of aircraft or the trip length. And
when people book charters, there's lots of things to arrange, like fuel and repositioning, de-icing, catering. I'm running half an hour late, and typically they call the broker. How does it work with you?
So we've got our kind of expert ops team that are here, all either airlines. So it's great. I managed to pool a load of people that came from the airline industry as well as corporate industry. And we've been able to really put a good equivalent of an OCC stroke, a dispatch cell in place here. So we basically do all of the kind of preamble for that. We don't, because we are the ones that are connecting. The contract sits between the operator and the client directly. So the second that the passenger has prepaid for their trip, before we select the operator, as soon as we decide the operator based on upgrade or newest, we then hand them over straight to the operator. We hold their hand, but we've already checked whether it includes standard catering. If they suddenly want Cristal champagne and caviar, they can just sort that out directly with the operator. But we try and obviously notify the clients, and we send out passenger guides to make sure that they know that actually when you've got aircraft moving around the world doing 3 or 4 or 5 sectors a day, sometimes you might not get the catering that you want. So, which is a big problem when the industry's so busy.
So you launched 8 days ago.
Yeah.
How's it going?
I'm staggered. I'm absolutely staggered. People coming, downloading the app. So we've had over 150 downloads of the app already, from Hawaii, California, so plenty in the States, Indonesia, Nigeria, Dubai. I'm staggered, absolutely staggered. But the best thing that I'm really quite keen on is the amount of operators that are basically saying, great, how can we get this work? Because if we don't need to speak to anybody and we just tell you whether or not we've got availability, they're quite keen to go forward. So that's very encouraging to hear.
And 150 in the first week, how are you trying to grow it? How would you spread your name?
Well, so once you download the app, I basically developed and put a thing in there, QR code. We're all used to with the pandemic, obviously being able to scan in everywhere, and the QR codes have really come of age. So we've embedded that within the app. So again, with all of the experience that we've got, typically you've got an EA, a PA that's going to book travel, certainly for busy professionals. Often they're not involved. They're the ones dealing with everything. So what they're able to do is refer their friends by scanning and putting their QR code, their personal QR code, on business cards, social media, emails, whatever you want to do. And for each referrer that then scans that QR code, they then get a reward. They get a £100 sterling, so 140 US dollars cash reward, and that'll be recurring for every flight that person takes for the next 12 months. So it doesn't drop down at all. So if that person then introduces somebody else, you don't get anything. So it's a direct one-to-one. But if any flights that they take, so with the QR code and with the scalability that we've got, I think there, and the amount of people that are sharing it already, I'm fairly kind of sure that it will fan out over a period of time for sure.
Brilliant. And Alex Berry and Nikki have very kindly put links in the chat for anyone trying to find it. Okay, that's brilliant. If we get everyone back now and we can go through questions. Greg, did you want to show your chart for Dallas Love? I did say it was like Moneyball.
It's there. If Hannah wants to put it up, we can put it up for a second. So there's Dallas versus 2019. So you can see that for the year, it's up almost 17%, and most recent week, it's up 25%. So there you go for the Dallas Love, which is really the primary Dallas Market Airport.
Brilliant. And we can send that to you, Brian Moss, as well. Greg, stay on if we get rid of the slide. But Graham, we've got a question. Greg, we've got a question from you from Raymundo Villa. Any breakdown on large cabin versus mid-size charters?
Yes, I have that. I mean, what I could tell you is in the U.S., the large cabin is getting close to like single-digit percentages away from 2019 volumes. It has been suppressed just like the rest of the world because the international flying has been off. Some operators have been doing more domestic large cabin flying as a result. I mean, it's only natural. And but that's in contrast. Actually, if we want, if you want to bear with me for a second, I can do the Moneyball thing and show you in real time.
Okay, Greg, we'll come back to you in a second. I'm going to put a question to Ryan. Ryan, I've got no personal interest in this. I'm asking purely because Stephen Kelly has asked. But I know Robert would be interested. Does anyone know when the US is going to reopen to Europe? Would love to get back to the States. Can you not just WhatsApp Biden and ask him to take away the travel ban?
Yeah, we've got to get through the vaccine mandate for all the transportation and working through all the other things that he's laid out. But we'll get right on that.
Okay.
So, working it.
Come on, it doesn't take you hard. Let's get some lobbying on that. So basically no idea at all is your answer. Ryan, any guidance, any thoughts?
No, I mean, that's been one of the challenges. I mean, yesterday we were on the call with CDC and FAA discussing kind of where we are with the air travel in general. There is the theme consistently is we have to get everybody vaccinated. Everybody has to be vaccinated. And some of the thoughts that came up even on this call with FAA and CDC was, the ever-changing requirements for those that have been vaccinated. And how do we continue to manage the desired growth when there's always these challenges being put forth of more additional requirements for those that have been vaccinated? So unfortunately, it's just going to take, I think, time. It's very frustrating. I know for everybody, we're ready to get back to running, and we're pushing it as hard as we can.
Okay, just send a text. That's all you have to do.
That's it.
Greg, did you want to answer Raimundo's question quickly with a slide?
Sure. If Hannah wants to pop it up. So here's large cabin. If you take a look at it, so we actually had a period of time over the summer where the large cabin exceeded 2019. We had a peak there, and I think anecdotally talking to folks when Europe was sort of more open, there was a lot of transatlantic travel going on there. We saw it drop off, and if we look at it, look at it for the year, it's still off. This is January through present day, just about 5%, and about 1.4% in the most recent week. So that's kind of where that is. But then if you compare that to, say, here's light cabin, right, we're seeing different trend where we're up 8.6% for the year and about 6% for the week. Right here is mids, which are up. So mids are up quite a bit more, 24% most recent week, and almost 15% for the year. Super mids are really the size class that's taken the cake. I don't think that's a surprise for too many in the industry here, but that's how they shake up with almost 28% increase. So an awful lot of the new volume is going to that cabin class, right? And then turboprops sort of tracked a little closer. I mean, they're up overall. We had they sort of follow their own demand pattern and haven't been as impacted as some of the other size classes. But there you go.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Greg. That was great answering. John, I've got a really good question from you, from Gil Woolen of Business Aviation Advisor magazine. Charter revenues will never contribute the dollars that owners and management programs too often expect. Current conditions may raise expectations temporarily, but there will be a reckoning. Will that create some program hopping as owners search for more charter dollars?
That's a great question. Honestly, in what we do, I don't think so. At the end of the day, for an organization, the responsibility comes back to, and I'll say it again, education, but also into managing the expectation of the user and being able to place them in, whether it's a program or a one-off opportunity that best aligns to what their requirements are. The idea, and we've seen it come up and go back down a number of times here in the US, of commoditizing private travel is very, very challenging, because people will take the once bitten, twice shy approach and might sour from an opportunity that would otherwise be lucrative for the industry in total if they've not been served with, what their expectations were associated with the cost. If you do your homework and you align things the correct way and you move according to the need of the customer, you can't help but maintain their affinity, whether it's through a company like Magellan Jets, a wholly owned fleet, or otherwise.
John, that's a great answer. Quick question for you, Nick, from Charles Rees. Does the £100 include brokers who help promote?
It doesn't matter. Anybody that registers, downloads as a referrer on the app, and then anybody that they introduce, it will do that for. So it's absolutely perfect for the smaller brokers that can't compete with the bigger guys that want a consistent revenue. Because again, we move into this thing, particularly in regards to empty legs. They do the industry no favors at all. Being offered at the weekend a Hawker 800 to go from Opelika up to the Hamptons for $5,500, it doesn't help anybody, because all that happens is when the guy needs to come back after he's paid the $5,500 and you then have to invoice him $20,000 for the return trip, you're upsetting the very people that we're trying to retain in the industry. And I think much more education needs to be done on that, and a lot more transparency. And Robert has said several times, the safety, security, flexibility, and connectivity, it's got to work both ways. And we've got to be honest to the passengers if we want to keep them in the industry. And currently, I don't think we're doing a very good job. And that's why I've basically brought these platforms to market.
Charles says, awesome. I am a small guy. Very quick question from Mike Francis, and this is free game for anyone who wants it, either Ryan, John, or Greg, whoever jumps in first. Where's the additional capacity going to come from? Are you seeing Part 91 owners putting their planes on a Part 135 certificate? Anyone? Yeah, John.
Yeah, so I think we are seeing, it's an interesting sort of a situation. We've seen a lot of Part 91 owners that had their aircraft on 135 certificates take them off because they want their aircraft at their own availability more consistently. They don't want it to get the number of cycles on them, et cetera, and they've gone the other way. What we have seen, though, is an influx of new owners. They are, I'd say, in two categories. Those that think that it's like going and buying a car and getting the car registered and licensed, and someone who knows how to drive and has a driver's license and you're good to go, which is completely unrealistic, as we all know. And there's others that are looking at this as a long-term investment opportunity and looking to do it the right way and know that it's not going to be an immediate return on their investment, but they're looking longer term and looking to retain relationships with companies that will bring them the right type of business. And they're looking at more of as an investment as opposed to an asset that they specifically are looking to get that return out of or get an economy of scale out of.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Very quick question to end with Robert Boltus. Private jets in the press a lot, and actually I use the term private jet deliberately. There was a big story on CNN about rabbits flying on private jets this week. Robert, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we as an industry have to make sure we put things in perspective. And yeah, we do it, but it's minute, and it's a great story, and people like it, but it can backfire. So I think we as an industry, and I'll go back to the educate, which Nick and John rightly said, as we have the most technology advanced industry, we are working hard on sustainability. We're working hard on the environment. Now, I know it's a great story, and you get your name on CNN, but we really have to be sure that, look, guys and girls, this is not what our industry is about. This is originally business aviation and private aviation. Let's make sure that the message out there is the right one. You know, we're spending a lot of time on making our industry more sustainable. I don't care about the rabbit. Yeah, it's a nice story. But let's make sure, whether you're a broker or an operator, let's make sure, guys, let's stay on message. It's about making the industry more efficient, more green, and make sure the customers stay.
And if you are going to do it, the headline is why more travelers are flying their pets by private jet. At least go for a pun, like perfect jet. It's a dog's life. It's something like that. Just work a bit harder. Thank you so much to John Amate from Magellan Jets, Ryan Wagiuspak from the National Air Transport Association, Greg Johnson from Tivoli, Robert Boltus from the European Business Aviation Association, and Nick Davis for Instajet. Thank you so much to all of you for watching and for your questions. And we'll see you all in a few weeks. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Hi, everyone. This is Scott O'Brien with NBAA. I wanted to let you know about our Tax, Regulatory, and Risk Management Conference, which will be October 10th through 11th, right before NBA base in Las Vegas. Please join us to learn about the latest in federal and state tax planning for aircraft transactions and updates on key regulatory issues involving aircraft exports and the FAA registry modernization. Please visit nbaa.org/tax2021 to learn more. We hope to see you in Las Vegas.
For nearly 60 years, clients have returned to Jetcraft because of our proven results in aircraft sales, acquisitions, and trades. Our team of experts span the globe, providing local insight for every stage of your transaction. We have one of the largest and most diverse inventories in the industry, and with our worldwide network and industry connections, we are the difference between getting an aircraft and getting your aircraft.